The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome back to the Shepnaz Podcast. Happy Tuesday if you're listening to this on release day. I am Zack, your host for this lovely podcast that we have here, along with my good friend, Pastor Rob Paugh.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back, my friend.
It's so good to be here.
I mean, it feels like I haven't seen you in...
At least 30 seconds.
At least 30 seconds. I blinked and it feels like it just happened. No, just joking. But for real, we are very excited to continue our conversation from yesterday. This is part 2 of us walking through Pastor Rob's sermon from Sunday. We're in Galatians, and yesterday we were talking about the importance of some meetings that were going down, and really how the importance of these meetings really shape the trajectory of like what we believe and how we do church today.
Yeah.
You know, had these meetings gone a little bit differently, you know, church would look, you know, there's times that we think like, oh, Christians are legalistic and, you know, they might be a little too rule-based. Like, if these meetings went the way that they could have gone, that doesn't even touch what legalism could look like in the church today.
Yeah. We would be as Jewish as you could get.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you and I would fit in very well into
probably not
this vibe of church.
Although I do have a hat on all the time. I do cover my head. So
there you go.
It's not a yarmulke, but I do have a hat.
Just get rid of that bill and you're in, man. It's fine. Well, we are getting ready to dive in. We had already talked about the first and second meetings that Paul had and how really what's cool about these meetings too is like, I think they were a good lesson for me. So like the first meeting that he had was with his people, right?
Yeah.
Like his leaders, and how it was, you know, there's this big idea being presented that it's like, you know, there's these Judaizers that are coming in and saying, yeah, you can believe in Jesus, but you still got to do all these rules. And that's why he's going back and checking in on the church. So now he's checking in on his church leadership.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Right.
So before he goes off the rails and starts yelling at a big crowd of people, he meets with his leadership first, which is a huge, I think, leadership lesson for all of us, that if we work with anybody or have quote unquote employees or even close friends that we do ministry with, it's like, if you have a problem, like go to your people first.
Yeah. Don't surprise them in front of other people.
Right. Yeah. That usually doesn't go over very well.
Yeah.
But then the second meeting's the big one where it's like you're meeting with the Judaizers, you're meeting with your guys, and you're presenting to essentially like a courtroom. It's like, hey, here's what I mean by this.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they gave him the thumbs up. They're like, you're good, Paul. You're a good dude. They gave him a stamp of approval.
Yep.
And things are going the way they should be going.
Yeah.
And now that brings us to meeting number 3.
Yeah. So it's same chapter 2 in Galatians, a little bit later.
Yeah.
And Peter is in Antioch, which is one of the churches that Paul planted, Paul and Barnabas, on their missionary journey. And I'll set this up. So Peter's in Antioch, and as he's there, he's eating with the Gentiles, which is like not a big deal. You would expect that, right? But here, let me give you like a quick cultural thing here. Like, first of all, to eat a meal together in that culture, it was a big deal, right? To eat with someone was to admit them into your circle as a close personal friend. Like you would never eat with somebody. It's kind of that way today. Like, you don't go to a restaurant and sit with somebody you don't know.
Right.
I've been to resturants like that. It's kind of weird.
It's
you
very
do
different.
get to know people, but typically you go with people who are your people, your tribe, right? And so back in that day, if Peter's eating with Gentiles, he's really like sending a message, right? And the message that he's sending is that these people are my tribe.
Right.
I don't have problems with them. We're friends with them. We're fellowshipping together. We have a level of agreement and things like that. So he's like sharing this meal with them, and he's saying like they're one of your tribe. To kind of help understand that, if you remember in the Gospels, Jesus used to eat with sinners and tax collectors. Like the Bible had said that, and he got in trouble for it. And it wasn't, you know, eating with tax collectors and sinners doesn't seem like a big deal, but culturally, what Jesus was saying is that they're a part of my tribe.
Right. These are my people.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with them. I love them. They love me, that kind of thing. So Jesus got in trouble because he's supposed to be a rabbi. He's supposed to be separate from that stuff.
Right.
So Peter is in Antioch, right? And he's eating with Gentiles. So he's making this statement, and then something happens. As he's in Antioch, some of the other church leaders show up, like James, one of the church leaders, right? Remember Peter, James, and John running the church in Jerusalem. Peter's in Antioch now. James shows up. Before James shows up, Peter's eating with a bunch of Gentiles. But when James shows up, he like changes. He changes. He like pulls back, right? He's like, he stops eating with the Gentiles. And so prior to Jesus coming, there were reasons that Jews didn't eat with Gentiles, right? The Old Testament had detailed a list of laws that worshipers had to follow in order to be ceremonial clean, and if they broke the laws, then they couldn't draw near to God. Some of the examples of those laws were like, if you ate certain foods, you would be considered unclean for a while. You couldn't draw near to God. Or if you touched something that was dead, or if you had a disease or around someone who had a disease, you were considered unclean, and you couldn't, draw near to God.
Right.
Well, Gentiles were considered unclean. All Gentiles. If you weren't a Jew, you were considered unclean.
Right.
So to have a meal with them would make you unclean. But Peter's doing that. He's like, they're not unclean. Right. He even had a vision from God in Acts, talked about don't call things unclean that I've called clean.
Right.
So Peter's like, let's go to Roosters, let's have some wings or whatever. Like they're doing their thing together. Then James shows up, and when James shows up, Peter's like, he stops eating with them. It's like noticeable. Like it's not just like, I'm just busy. It's like he stops.
Right.
And Paul notices it. James notices it, and Barnabas, remember Barnabas, Paul's buddy, he notices it. And when Barnabas notices it, he's like, there must be something wrong. So Barnabas stops doing it. And so now Paul's like, what the heck?
Right.
What is going on? We just had this big meeting. We just said, that's fine. They're good. Why are you doing that? And so Paul's like, this is a big deal. Paul's like, if my leaders see Peter doing that and they start doing that, we're undoing everything that we just did.
Right.
It's like, so Paul.
Why aren't you getting this, guys? Come on.
So Paul's frustrating. And so in verse 11, my Bible, the heading is Paul opposes Peter. Those are big words.
Yeah,
these are like two big heavy hitters, and they're having this opposition, right? So what happens is meeting number 3, Paul's like calling Peter out. He's like, hey, you're being a hypocrite.
Right.
In front of people. Like, here's what the Bible says. It says, before certain men came from James, like in other words, when James came, he used to eat with Gentiles, but when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group, or all the Jewish people, right? The other Jews joined him in his hypocrisy, so that by their hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. So Paul's like, I just can't let this happen. Now, it's interesting. The Greek word for hypocrite means to act in a manner contrary to beliefs. So remember, just at the Jerusalem Council not long ago, they all decided that the Gentiles were not unclean, that they received the gospel the same way we do. We don't have to follow the laws and the rules and all this other kind of stuff. And guess who it was that delivered the verdict? Peter.
Exactly.
Right. He's the spokesperson, right? He gets out and he says all this kind of stuff. He goes on and he says, we all receive Christ by faith, all this stuff. And Paul's like, you said all the right stuff,
right,
but you're doing the wrong stuff. That's the definition of being a hypocrite, right? If you say the right thing or you do the wrong thing, that's what a hypocrite is. So Paul's like, dude, I'm calling you out. And he called him out in front of everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like he says, the Bible even says he called him out in front of everybody, which is the opposite of what he just did.
Right.
So earlier he's like, let's talk in private and make sure we're on the same page. But this is such a big deal. He's like, I'm not doing this in private.
Yeah. And
it's interesting. So first of all, you kind of wonder, like, what was it that motivated Peter to stop eating with the Gentiles? He already said they were fine, and some people said, well, maybe it was fear that he would be criticized by other leaders who were still struggling with that. Because remember, it's been centuries that they've been living this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like Jewish pride. Maybe it had been drilled into their heads that since they were born, that Gentiles were unclean, and so it's like, yeah, we're better than everybody else.
Right.
Maybe it's nationalism, like Christians can't be pleasing God unless they become Jews, and so like we're the best, kind of like what Americans sometimes do, which is not good. Whatever it might have been. But Paul's problem with Peter's hypocrisy was that it was negatively affecting the other leaders, and so he didn't want that to happen. But ultimately, he's like, this is jeopardizing the integrity of the gospel.
Yeah.
Like if you say that this is the way we should live, but then you're not living that way, people see it. And that's what people today see that. Like you can
100%.
say all the right stuff, but if you don't do the right stuff, they're like, you're a hypocrite.
Yep.
And what happens with a hypocrite's message is that it has no credibility. Right. And so Paul's like, no, we're not going to do that. So Paul rebukes Peter in front of everyone, which is a big deal. And literally in Galatians chapter 2, 14, it says, I said to Peter in front of all the others. Like he calls him out, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome because for Paul it was like, listen, I love you, Peter. You're my brother. I don't want to make you look bad, but the gospel is so important that we can't take a chance by letting people misunderstand the true clarity of the message.
Right.
So he's like, I'm sorry, but I'm calling you out in front of everybody. And it was appropriate, right? I mean, 100%. He's holding his brother accountable.
Yep.
And so then Peter, it doesn't say how Peter responded, but I'm sure that he responded like, this isn't right, because we see later on Peter is preaching to, Gentiles as well, and the church continues to grow, and Peter's a good leader of the church. Yeah. But what Paul does next is this. So for clarity, Paul declares the gospel is dependent upon what Jesus did, not upon what we do. And that's really the message of Galatians altogether. I want to read for you Galatians 2:15 and 16. Some of the stuff I was studying this week, they would say that Galatians chapter 2, verses 15 and 16 is the clearest picture of the gospel that we have anywhere in the Bible. And they're like, it's like the manifesto. And this is what it says. Paul says this. He says, you and I are Jews by birth, not mere Gentile sinners. And yet we Jewish Christians know very well that we cannot become right with God by obeying our Jewish laws, but only by faith in Jesus Christ to take away our sins. And so we too have trusted Jesus Christ that we might be accepted by God because of faith, and not because we have obeyed the Jewish laws, for no one will ever be saved by obeying them. Like you can't get any more clear than that.
Right.
And that's the Living Bible. And I like the Living Bible because sometimes it cuts through all of the unclarity and makes it just like really clear for us.
Right.
But if you look up like the King James Version, the NIV, English Standard Version, different versions like that, there's the phrase justified by faith. All right. And so this justified by faith is an important phrase in the Christian faith. Yeah. This is the first place in Paul's letter that it's ever used. And so probably it's the first place in the New Testament that it's used because this is the first of Paul's letters.
Right.
Paul talks a lot about it in Romans, like the entire book of Romans almost is about that. But this is the first time he uses it. And this phrase is important because it clarifies, it's like the antithesis of the Judaizers. It's like, no, justification comes by faith in what Jesus did, not by what I do, not by what I earn, not by how I act, none of those kinds of things, right? Yep. And in fact, Martin Luther, when he started the Protestant Reformation, it was justification by faith. They didn't use that term exactly, but it was the summary of what he was preaching. Is like it's not by keeping the church's rules. This is in the 15th or 16th century. Yeah. It's by what it's by what Jesus has already done for me, right? Yep. And so there's a phrase, this definition, justification by faith. There's a like a definition for that, what it means, and it came by Warren Wiersbe and Ryrie. And this is a clear version of it, but there's been many versions of it. But this is what it says. What does it mean to be justified by faith? It says, justification is the act of God whereby he declares the believing sinner to be righteous in Jesus Christ. So this basically forms the foundation of the Protestant Reformation. This is basically what Paul is saying in Galatians chapter 2. Yeah. And so to wrap up our podcast, we'll walk through this definition because every word is important, right? So the first thing says it's an act. So an act means that it's not a process. Right. It's something that God does in a moment in time, and when he does the act, it is completed. So when God justifies us, we're justified. Yep. It's we're all justified the same, you and me the same. Yep. We're all justified the same way and the same amount. Like you didn't get more and I didn't get more, you didn't get less, I didn't get less. Yep. And it happens the same way. It's an act of God. Now, let me be clear about something. When God says we're justified, we're justified. Yep. It's an act, it's done. Romans chapter 5 verse 1 says, therefore, because we have been declared righteous by faith, we have peace with God. So when we come to him in faith, that what Jesus did on the cross, he declares us justified. He does it. It's like a judge making a declaration. You are justified. So it's done and over with. What I want to say is that there's more to it than that, right? So we talk about the process called sanctification, and I just gave it away. It's a process.
Yeah.
Justification is an act that happens when God declares you justified.
Yep.
Sanctification is the process that you live out the rest of your life with God and His Word and every way that He molds and shapes you that helps you become more and more like Jesus.
Yep.
When you're justified, you're going to heaven, but you're not changed.
Right.
What it does is it just changes your status from not justified to justified, not going to heaven, going to heaven. You're still you, and you still need to be changed and worked on and grow, right?
Right.
And so do I.
Right.
So it's an act of God, right? Second phrase. That means it's not earned or it's not the result of our work. In other words, I can't do anything to earn this.
Yep.
Like I can't give enough money, I can't be good enough, whatever. It's an act of God. So He does it. In Romans chapter 8, verse 33, it says, "Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies." Right. So God did it. It wasn't me. It was God.
Yep.
And so it's an act of God whereby He declares. So He declares means that before a sinner trusts Christ, he is guilty of sinning, right? But when he trusts Christ, God as the righteous judge declares that our guilt is changed to innocence. Now, this is interesting. I think this is interesting. Hopefully you do too. This is a forensic or legal declaration. Like it's God saying, legally, you are no longer unjustified, you are justified. I've made the legal decision. Doesn't mean I'm not guilty, because I was guilty.
Right.
And I'm still guilty because I've done it, right? Yep. So it doesn't change our moral character. Our moral character is changed through sanctification, which can sometimes be instantaneous. Like I'm not going to say God can't just like, when you get justified, God could sanctify you.
Right.
And He could change your, I've heard testimonies of people who are like, oh, I got saved and sanctified. I never drank, never smoked, never cussed, never whatever, just totally changed, whatever. It's not how it typically happens for
Right.
people. They get justified, and then God begins this process of working out their salvation, right? Working out who they are or whatever. God can do it instantaneously, but most of the time it's a process that works itself out all of our lives as we grow in grace. And so at the moment that God declares you not guilty, your life is spiritually changed forever, but it's at His declaration.
Yep.
So it's an act of God whereby He declares the believing sinner, right? So that's a funny word, the believing sinner, right? But we were a sinner, and now we believe, right?
Yep.
And so what this means is that God justifies sinners, not good people. So if you're going to be justified, you got to be a sinner.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in justifying a good person.
Yeah.
The problem is there isn't any good people except for Jesus.
Exactly.
Right? But I thought this was interesting. The reason that most sinners are not justified is because they won't admit that they're sinners. So there's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, I don't need this. I'm a pretty good person. I don't smoke and do whatever. I don't whatever your list is. I don't do those things. It still doesn't mean you're good.
Right.
Still, maybe you're a better sinner than everybody else.
Right.
But you're a sinner. But if you're not a sinner, you can't be justified because God only justifies sinners.
Yep.
So there's a level of being a sinner that's like, that's the qualification for being justified, right?
Yep.
And so it says in Romans 4:5, however, to the man who does not work but trusts God who justifies the wicked, his faith is credited as righteous. So the believing sinner. So the definition is an act of God whereby He declares the believing sinner to be righteous. Now, to be righteous means that the sinner is accounted or imputed as righteous before God. It doesn't mean that they're changed and that they're now they're considered righteous because God has changed them. It's because God has said, I'm going to make you that way, right? And that can only be done because Christ's perfect righteousness is imparted or credited to Him. So I can never be righteous unless God gives me righteousness from Christ. Christ is the only one who was righteous. So Jesus died on the cross, and He's like, I'm going to take that and give it to you.
Yep.
And so it's like a heart transplant almost kind of deal. It's like I get something that's not mine, and it becomes mine when God gives it to me. That's that. And then the last phrase is in Jesus Christ, which means our salvation is utterly dependent upon the work of Jesus on the cross.
Yep.
And I think about this passage of Scripture in Ephesians where Paul says, it's because of his kindness you've been saved through trusting Christ. It's not because you were good, not because of your works, because of anything else. He says, and even trusting is not of yourselves, it too is a gift from God. So Paul's like, you've trusted Christ, but he gave you the ability to trust him.
Right.
Like you didn't even do the trusting on your own. It was Jesus who gave you the ability to trust, right? And that's a gift, he says. So salvation is not a reward for the good we do, because we can't do enough good. So none of us can take any credit for it. God gets all the credit. So the definition is justification is this act of God whereby he declares the believing sinner to be righteous in Jesus Christ. And that sums up really this argument that Paul is making to the Galatian churches is like, you can't do it.
Right.
You can't earn it. You can't deserve it. It's this gift. It's what Jesus has done for us. And so, the challenge at the end of the day is to ask ourselves the question, what am I depending on to get myself into heaven? And I said this 2 weeks ago in the message. I'm like, we're wired. We are hardwired to think we have to do something. Like,
Right.
I have to do something. The only thing we have to do is accept what God has already done.
Yeah.
And that's the only way. So I hope that today, if you're listening, and I'm sure many of you have already put your faith and trust in what Jesus did on the cross. But if you're out there and you're working hard, trying to be good, trying to earn God's love, trying to earn forgiveness, let me just remind you, it's an act of God whereby he transforms the believing sinner to be righteous in Jesus Christ. There's nothing you can do.
Yep.
And so just to accept that. And so if you've never done that, I pray that today you would take a moment and you would just receive what he has for you. It's a gift. That's what you do with a gift. You receive it.
Absolutely. Man, that's powerful stuff right there, buddy.
That's not even the good verse in this,
I know,
in this chapter.
It only just keeps getting better,
It does.
baby.
It's crazy.
Man, well, if this was not an encouragement for you today, I suggest you listen back again, because I know I'm leaving encouraged. And, we just heard it. If you haven't accepted that, there it is. It's a gift, man. You can't earn it. You can't deserve it. And I know there's people in my life that need to hear that. So if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear that and you need help articulating it, share this episode with them, man. Let us know how we can help you. Reach out to us. We love you guys. Have a great day.
This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.
Yep.